Welcome to And the Runner-Up Is. This week on the show, we'll travel back in time to the 1997 Oscars, which awarded the films of 1996. After finding success on a smaller scale with such films as Blood Simple and Raising Arizona, Joel and Ethan Coen properly broke through the mainstream with their comedic crime thriller Fargo, starring Frances McDormand and William H. Macy. The film, along with many others in 1996, was a victory for independent film, and won a slew of critics' prizes along the way and 2 major Oscars, but it was not able to beat The English Patient when it came to Best Picture. So why did Fargo fail to overcome The English Patient? We'll explore all this and more as we discuss how the Oscar almost went to Fargo. Hello, and welcome back to And the Runner-Up Is. I am your host, as always, Kevin Jacobson, and today with me, I have my first ever returning guest to the podcast. And what better returning guest to have than the founder of AwardsWatch, Mr. Erik Anderson.
I totally agree. I am the best choice that you could possibly have for a second. No, I'm kidding. Hi, thanks.
Humble as always. Yes. So yes, this year we're going to be talking about 1996, a very fun film year and Oscar year especially. So
AKA the 69th Academy Awards.
Heyo. Yes, the 69th, baby. Here we go. So more on that later. So today we are going to be talking about the movie Fargo, which was beaten for Best Picture by The English Patient, a very, very different kind of movie. So let's just first jump into a summary of Fargo. So Fargo is a crime, comedy, drama blending of genres about a hapless car salesman, Jerry Lundegaard, from Minneapolis, who is in desperate need of money. And so he hires these 2 men to kidnap his wife in order to extort ransom money from his rich father-in-law. And so everything kind of spirals out of control when, after the 2 men have kidnapped his wife, with there's a police officer being killed, 2 eyewitnesses being killed, and everything spirals out of control. And that's where we meet Marge Gunderson, who is this cheery, folksy, pregnant police chief who attempts to solve the crime as Jerry tries to essentially keep all of his plates spinning. And so the film stars William H. Macy as Jerry, Frances McDormand as Marge. We've got Steve Buscemi, Peter Stormare, Harvey Presnell, John Carroll Lynch, Steve Rivas, and more. So Fargo was, of course, directed by Joel Coen, who wrote the screenplay with his brother Ethan Coen. And the film made $24 million at the domestic box office, $60 million worldwide. It was nominated for 7 Academy Awards and won 2 of them, but not Best Picture. So, Erik, what are your thoughts on Fargo?
I love Fargo. I love Fargo. So that's my thoughts. No, I mean, I was already a Coen Brothers fan and a Frances McDormand fan, so it was not a big leap to think that I was not going to love Fargo, but I loved it even more than I thought that I would. I just thought it was the quintessential Coen Brothers movie, but I guess with a slightly fancier or shinier pedigree, I guess. I mean, I had loved, Blood Simple and Raising Arizona, but each of those had a sort of rustic indie quality to them. And visually, Fargo was just much more refined. And I think it utilized the potential for cinematography that some of their other films didn't put such a focus on. So it just kind of hit everything for me.
Absolutely. I'm going to use the M word again. This movie, I think, is a masterpiece. It's only 99 minutes, I believe, but it manages to make every single one of those minutes count, and I wouldn't have had it any shorter or any longer. I also say this because I've had to watch a lot of long movies over the past 20 something weeks, and so I appreciate a movie like this that can really just get to the point, but also accomplish so much in those 99 minutes. The plot is very clever, lots of surprising amount of layers, which you can kind of enjoy the movie on the surface level of the madcap crime aspect. But I think there's also some really interesting layers about morality, and the differences between characters are really well defined and really interesting. The performances are pretty amazing as well between Frances McDormand and William H. Macy. And even Steve Buscemi, who does not get a nomination, but it's a really, really great cast. And you could tell they really spent a lot of time trying to nail down these roles, these accents, these very specific accents, and just the overall sensibility of what it is to obviously live in a place like this. And so let's delve a bit into this crazy story of Fargo, especially as far as the Jerry aspect and his brilliant idea to basically have his wife kidnapped and then extort money from his own father-in-law. Let's just delve into this. What do you make of this story, which is presented as, in the beginning, a true story? We obviously know that it's not exactly that. Mm-hmm. But just what do you make of this story to begin with?
I love the cheekiness of calling it a true story, because it could easily be a true story when you have things like the Texas cheerleader murdering mom, which was like a huge story back in the 90s, and a movie was made of that, and it falls in line with the type of things that you would read about in the Midwest. Happening. Yeah. And as a coaster, a west or an east coaster, you would scratch your head and think, wow, that seems just kind of wacky. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how the movie plays out, and it's a really good balance, I think, of not specifically just mocking or making fun of plains states and Midwesterners, even though, I mean, the thing that people pull out always is the accents and the don't you knows and all of that.
Oh yeah.
And the oh yeahs and all of that. And it's a huge component. And in that regard, it is very much for somebody on the West Coast or somebody on the East Coast to be able to kind of giggle at. But it isn't just simply that, because everybody and everything in the entire scenario is over the top and hyper real and exaggerated, and that's what takes something that on face value would be really horrifying and ugly and dark, and gives it this nice gloss of satire and of humor. And it's the thing that the Coen brothers are really just almost better than anybody at doing, and why I think this movie is just such a successful film from a critical standpoint. Yeah. It hits so many bases, and it does so with such precision.
Right.
It's almost infallible in that sense.
And that's something that the Coen brothers have been kind of criticized for, as far as like maybe they make fun of their characters a lot. But I do think it's kind of the sense of, they are from Minnesota themselves, so they know this world more than anyone. This very specific kind of Midwestern folksiness mixed with like the dark underbelly and everything. So I think the fact that they are from there, it's kind of like, I can make fun of my own people, as opposed to how it normally is with Hollywood, where it's just West Coasters just like poking fun at the flyover states sort of deal.
Yeah. And I think this is a movie and a story that is super accessible, and it reminds me of like a very classic like Preston Sturges level comedy. It's I don't know. I could probably never like not say enough great things about it because it is just so smart and funny and sympathetic. It's it is a masterpiece. I would totally not disagree with you on that.
And like I said, I really just love the two characters of Jerry and Marge. And I think Jerry's arc is just so funny to me, just from like a almost Schadenfreude level of just watching this man totally fall apart at the seams and have no idea of the grandeur of what he's done. And, you know, I really like how he is just kind of this hapless person, kind of borderline pathetic person who needs money and is trying to think of the best way to do it, and reaches for such an outlandish way of doing so, while also not really taking into account anyone but himself, because he's a very self-interested person. And I really like this one scene that not many people really talk about or remember from Fargo, but it's when his father-in-law's right-hand man, Stan, talks to Jerry and mentions Scotty, who is Jerry's and his wife's son.
Yeah.
And Jerry kind of has this moment of recognition that William H. Macy plays so well, of like, oh yeah, I have this son who might be like totally traumatized by this. And, you know, the scene after that is him kind of explaining things to her or to him. I just feel so bad for young Scotty in this movie, because, not to spoil things, but like his entire life is ruined after this.
That's an understatement. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it would be. The movie too, though, doesn't really, except for that one moment, doesn't really, you know, give the audience that level of, oh my God, what about the son?
Yeah.
We're actually given basically the same level of knowledge as Jerry has, and we're kind of just running along with him. Yes, we know what he's doing is stupid and insane and it won't work and all of that. But I don't know. I wasn't in the moment thinking about, oh my gosh, what about their son? I was just so focused on how ridiculous Jerry's plan was that I was just following whatever he was just going to do next. So the concept of him not thinking about his son makes perfect sense until he's reminded of it, because that's kind of how I felt too. I was like, oh shit, that's right.
Yeah. There's like collateral damage here, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really, really smart writing. And you contrast that with Marge, who is just like this, for me, a very iconic movie hero, especially of the modern age, is like one of the most defining heroic figures to me. She's someone who is very confident in her abilities. She's very intuitive, very smart, but also very humble. And she loves her husband and she loves her small little life. And she doesn't even become like obsessed with this case, because, you know, we just see her at the end of the day going home to her husband, lying in bed watching TV, turning in for the night, you know, just, this is her job. And when she comes home, she's with her husband and she's happy. And I think this is such a great character. What do you make of Marge?
I think she's probably one of the best female characters that like ever.
Yeah.
In film ever. She gets to be, and McDormand is beyond perfect. There is no one else that could have done this. No one, which is really the mark of just like a really fucking great actor.
Exactly.
She gets to be vulnerable, strong, physically and intellectually. She is the most emotionally supportive wife, in a way that is completely genuine. I think my favorite Marge moment, which, you know, again, like yours with Jerry, may not be the most obvious one, but it's near the end when she's talking with her husband about getting picked for the stamp,
Mm.
and then stamp prices changing, and he's feeling really bad that nobody's going to want to, need his stamps. And she's like, well, when the stamp price raises, they're going to need the set, your little stamp to add to the other stamps. And I can almost get like emotional thinking about
I
that,
know.
because it was, that's how you're a supportive partner.
Mm-hmm.
In the moment. It was so just genuine and free of anything but purity.
Yeah.
It is my favorite Marge moment. And it only exists in the realm of everything else that she does in the film, whether she is, drawing her gun on Peter Stormare, or trying to navigate that super awkward diner conversation
Mm.
about unrequited love.
Yeah.
And again, there too is such a perfect example of a genuinely kind person in an extremely difficult situation.
Yeah.
Um, this is, a film that's 20 something years old, but I I would put it right now, with against any film. I don't think that it has aged negatively at all. I think there are few films too that would have had a scene like that scene in the diner, about how women have to navigate really awkward situations and how they are expected to do it in a way that is a respectful decline of affection,
Mhm.
that is, not so much to let the guy down. There is so much that is expected of women in that regard, and if they don't do it exactly right, they're a bitch and frigid, or whatever else, men want to call them.
Yep.
So her being able to navigate that like she does, and the Coen brothers writing it like they did, and Frances McDormand playing it like she did, is, again, this is a perfect situation of actor, director, script. Perfect.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you mentioned those two scenes, because those are definitely some of my favorites and will probably stick with me even more having just rewatched it, as the most powerful, deep scenes in the film, which is obviously her scene with Mike, who is this person she knew in high school, I believe, who
Yeah.
is basically lying about the fact that his wife died. Not only that she died, but that that she was even his wife. So obviously, this scene is very important, even though it doesn't seem like it would be important, because it looks kind of like, what does this have to do with the main plot or anything?
Mm-hmm.
It's a really subtle and interesting way of having Marge connect some dots, as far as not treating someone like Jerry at face value and realizing that he might be someone who's clearly lying. And so I think that's a really interesting way that the Coen brothers manage how she is able to put things together without overtly beating you over the head with that from a storytelling perspective.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Because Marge is definitely a person that would want to see the best in everybody.
yeah.
But on the other side, she is a police detective, so she is trained to sniff out bullshit and to figure shit out.
Correct. Yeah, and I totally agree with how she handles like his advances, with him wanting to go over and sit with her on her side, where she's just like, "Oh, well, I don't want to turn my head to look at you." So
Mhm. It's
it's
yeah.
just
I mean,
so good.
that's what I mean. She just, how she navigates that is oh my god, it just blows me away. I love
Right.
it. She's amazing.
She is. And I agree with the ending scene is a really great powerful ending as well, where again, like most of that scene, like they're not talking about her and how she solved this grand citywide case here. They're just she's just talking about her husband and his accomplishments and his goals. And so and also it's a really nice metaphorical speech that they talk about, which is, the sense of they may be small and they may have this small life and have these small accomplishments, but that doesn't mean they don't have value in some way. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she knows that, what just happened, with this massive case is, statewide news and would probably be nationwide news, but she doesn't let it, get in the way of her being supportive. And again, it's a very careful balance, because she doesn't simply suppress her own success and her own strength and her own ability,
right,
just to favor her husband. It's not like that at all. It's just a very careful and thoughtful examination of a marriage.
mm-hmm. Relationship goals.
Exactly.
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 Because he's also like waking up to make her eggs and everything. So
Yes,
it's really nice.
It's a nice role reversal, which
it
I
really
think,
is.
which
Yeah.
I mean, especially even at the time. Again, we're only talking 22 years, but I mean, what a female lead in film was 22 years ago is not even what it is now.
Right.
So
exactly.
so that flip of genders was a big deal.
Mm-hmm. And John Carroll Lynch is so good in this role. It's a very small role, but it's
John Carroll Lynch is good in every role, but yes, he is very good in this.
Yeah. So let's talk about the two goons we have here, which is Carl Showalter and Geir Grimsrud, played by Steve Buscemi and Peter Stormare. I mean, this is just some of the best comic relief that there is in film for me. Just these two people who couldn't be more different, who are just like Steve Buscemi is constantly getting frustrated at, Stormare's lack of social skills and the fact that he won't say anything, and then like he wants to stop for pancakes at the pancake house.
Well, I mean, it's just one of the many reasons why this whole misadventure, goes wrong. It was obviously going to go wrong anyway, because Jerry is just really terrible at thinking this whole thing up. But every element of it down the line, it was doomed to fail just by the parties involved.
Exactly. It's so funny. Just the chain reaction is just like a train wreck. You're just so good.
Yeah.
I love the whole ensemble here, even down to the smaller parts, and even down to like, Jerry's wife, Jean, who is, I believe I read that she was born in Fargo itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think she's an actress anymore, but just a really fun, a little bit two-dimensional at times, but still very fun little addition.
Oh, I thought she was wonderful.
Yeah.
I love her. I love her fucking reaction when she sees him at the window.
She's just like peering over, like, oh, that's kind of curious.
It is. It sort of has this like neighborly, like, well, no, of course I would not expect anybody to be, breaking through my glass door and kidnapping me.
Even though this guy has like a mask on and everything.
Exactly. It literally takes that glass breaking for her to realize what's going on.
I know. Yeah. And when I was watching her, for some reason, it reminded me of a role that like Missy Pyle would do. Just a thought.
Very much so. Yes.
Yeah.
Very much
like
so.
Nowadays.
If they were, to redo it, but heaven forbid, because that would be a really horrible idea. Yeah, absolutely. Missy Pyle would be perfect.
Yeah. Any particular lines from the movie that were memorable for you? Because it's very quotable. So,
I mean, that's the thing. It's eminently quotable. Yes. And I think that happens with a lot of these movies. I mean, Drop Dead Gorgeous, also taking place in the same kind of locale, is similar in that too. But again, I'm pulling as a West Coaster who's just kind of like, ha ha ha, you sound funny with your little accent,
right?
It's I don't know. I love the two girls that Marge interviews and had
Yeah.
sex with them, and saying that he's just kind of funny looking. I just love that. She couldn't
Just
really
kind of
like,
funny looking.
that's it. She couldn't
Can't get more
pinpoint it
specific.
any more than that. Just that he was kind of funny.
Yeah.
I loved that. I loved it.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
That's a really great scene. And I love how they're just like eager when they're like, oh, does that like help? You know? So, um, yeah. And then the fact that it like repeats again when they get another tip of somebody saying that he's funny looking guy, it's just so amazing.
It's
Um,
poor Steve Buscemi, but yeah.
I know. Well, he's dealt with this sort of thing.
I'm sure he has.
Yeah. Made a career of it. So, um, and just the quote that is not as funny, but certainly kind of the moral, in a sense, of the movie is when Marge is in the police car and Grimsrud, I can't even say that name, it just does not roll off the tongue. Grimsrud is in the back and she's saying, you know, and for what? A little bit of money.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There's more to life than money, you know.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful day. So I just really love that scene because you can see like the feelings on her face of just like not understanding why so many people in the world are so consumed just by money when she feels perfectly happy with her own life and feels satisfied. So
it is. There's an interesting disconnect there, though, that I mean, yeah, she doesn't understand because she does not live their life of desperation and of crime and of everything that got them there. So yeah, she's trying to break it down, and she does. She breaks that moment down for herself, and she doesn't understand it, and she'll never understand it, but she doesn't need to understand it either for her job. She's trying to understand it on a human level, but I don't know if she will, as I think almost anybody that does not live a life of crime and murder, we're not able to look at it really from an empathetic point of view. I guess is how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
You can look at it from, oh wow, you had a bad childhood and there's, you know, these elements that might have led you there, but it's just kind of clinical at that point, and I think she wants to have an emotional understanding of it, but I think she also knows that she won't.
Yeah, that's well said. I also wanted to talk about a few more surface level moments as far as I think the score by Carter Burwell is really great.
God.
And the fact that it took him so long to get his first Oscar nomination is kind of ridiculous.
It's insane. It's insane that while this got 7, that was not one of them.
Because it's such a distinct opening theme to begin with from the start.
One of the most.
Yeah.
Like ever.
So grand, but still kind of in keeping with the Midwestern nature of the movie. So and the ending as well. So yeah, that's a big oversight in my eyes.
Yeah, a weird one too.
Yeah. Cinematography, of course, we have to mention.
Yes.
By the great Roger Deakins.
Yeah, I mentioned at the top, and I know that he's done most of the Coen brothers films, but like I said, there was just something more refined about this. Every part of how the snow was shot was totally like another character.
Yep.
In the film, and it just I don't know. It just, there was so much more depth in the visuals of this than in some of the previous films. And again, that's, you know, for anybody listening, I'm not knocking any of the previous films. I just found this was on a different level.
It was for sure
than others.
Yeah, definitely. So is there anything else you want to cover about Fargo before we get into why it was not able to win Best Picture?
No, because I think we'll get into that in that conversation.
For sure. Yeah. Just to wrap things up, I mean, Fargo is a masterpiece and absolutely one of the Coen brothers' best movies, an essential American classic. And I suggest that if you haven't watched it already, you absolutely should. Like I said, it's short. It's on the shorter end of any of these movies, so absolutely watch it. And this is a movie that also got a spin-off TV show in 2014. So
really good one too.
Yeah. So a really interesting, expansive world. So get into it if you haven't already. Okay. So when we come back, we'll be talking about why Fargo lost Best Picture in 1996 to a movie called The English Patient.
Endless Patience.
Ooh, good one.
And I guess that was your accomplice in the wood chipper. And those 3 people in Brainerd. And for what? For a little bit of money. There's more to life than a little money, you know. Don't you know that? And here you are. And it's a beautiful day. Well. I just don't understand it.
And we're back. So now we're going to talk about why Fargo lost Best Picture to The English Patient. First of all, Fargo was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director for Joel Coen, Best Actress for Frances McDormand, Best Supporting Actor for William H. Macy, Best Original Screenplay, Best Cinematography, and Best Film Editing. And it walked away with 2 of those, which was Best Actress and Best Original Screenplay. And before the Oscars, Fargo won the Writers Guild Award and the Critics' Choice Award. But also, The English Patient happened to win the Golden Globe, the PGA, the DGA, and BAFTA. So let's talk about why Fargo lost Best Picture and why The English Patient really kind of swept a lot of this season. Take me through it, Erik. Explain this to me.
All right. It's not really that complicated. I mean, we'll be able to have a lot of conversation, but it isn't that complicated because this was the mid-90s. This was the height of Miramax. Height. And English Patient was a Miramax film, and it was every bit the type of Oscar movie that now we always say, oh, this is an Oscar bait kind of movie. You see something like Darkest Hour and we're like, oh my God, this is Oscar bait. And that's what people mean. And that is this era, the 80s and 90s, that had these out of Africa's English patients, exactly right. What we used to call, we used to call coffee table awards, like the cinematography and production design, costume design, and these but these are movies that were always periods, so they would be able to rack up 8, 9, 10 plus nominations because they were just it was all over the place with costume and production design. So just the sheer volume of nomination total based on that just kind of pushes a movie forward, or certainly used to. And again, everything needs to be in context of the year that it won. Any of these conversations, no matter what it is, always has to be in the context of that year, and not anything else, period. It just is that year. And yeah, this was the height of Harvey and Bob Weinstein. So that was the biggest reason. Although this was a really exceptional year, and if you were a teenager or adult Oscar watcher back then, this was a landmark year in terms of seeing a turn from studio films to independent films. I mean, the 5 that were nominated, 4 of them were independent films.
Right. The only one that wasn't, of course, was Jerry Maguire. So very much an independent kind of, it's an Independence Day, if you will.
Yeah, it absolutely was. And that was, but even English Patient's ability to win was exceptional in that regard, which isn't, again, anything against the film. And you know, if we're just doing Fargo versus English Patient, either of them winning would have been a success on those terms, because it was in the moment in that year, it looked like such a paradigm shift for what the future of Oscars and an Oscar winning movie was going to be. And this was, you know, also in the era of huge ratings. This was pre, you know, any kind of real internet, certainly pre Amazon and Netflix and anything like that. This Oscars had like 40 million viewers, which that show will never see again.
Right.
No matter how many outstanding popular film categories they try and shove in there for ratings, it won't happen again. Wow. It's not the same world. And 40 million people saw English Patient win Best Picture. And I think that certainly did help give like audiences also a look at films that they wouldn't have thought of otherwise.
Right. Which is what the Oscars should be for as well, you know?
Yes. Well, I mean, you know, I just did my Best Picture write-up today and for predictions, and I'm kind of just doing this stream of consciousness and bitching about this, you know, popular film category, and that it completely defeats the whole tenets of the Oscars and what they're supposed to be about, which is best and not popular.
Yeah.
But on the very other side of that, you know, it's, you know, I say that winkingly and snarkily, knowing that, you know, we bitch and complain about the Oscars not actually rewarding the best and, you know, giving Best Picture to Crash, but then they'll also give Best Picture to Moonlight. So there is no exact science.
Yeah, there never is. And it varies from year to year, as you suggested.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think beyond the obvious aggressive campaigning that Weinstein and company did with the Academy, and I think this is like, they changed the rules after this, from what I understand, as far as like what studios can do to campaign to Academy voters.
Well, I mean, there's been like half a dozen changes.
That's true.
of the reach that they could have.
Right. Yeah. But, you know, I was just reading like about Weinstein just like calling voters and reminding them to watch The English Patient and all of that.
Oh yeah, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah. So
you'll get your nomination revoked.
Yes, indeed.
Hashtag alone yet not alone.
Alone yet not alone. A song that will live in infamy. God. Ugh. That's a whole other podcast. Just that alone. What happened there? But for The English Patient, I also think you just have to take note of the fact that like this is such a classic Oscar bait type of film, as you said, with sweeping grand vistas and a romantic element, and, you know, it being
a foreign land, and
yes, I mean, exotic,
all of these things that
attractive stars, you know.
Yeah.
And I will say I'm not a huge fan of The English Patient, but I think it does portray the passion very well. I think it's a very sensual movie, and at least that it has that going for it. But
I think parts of it are.
Yeah.
I think parts of it are.
Fair enough. But, you know, if you contrast that with Fargo, I think Fargo is a movie that does have more depth than people might think, but it also, to people who aren't as much fans of it, are just going to be like, well, it was kind of violent. And, you know, I don't know if I loved the humor in it, and it doesn't feel like a Best Picture. You know, even though we had a handful of exceptions, like The Silence of the Lambs being kind of violent and dark and seedy.
Mm-hmm.
This is just not the kind of movie that they would have gone for, especially in the 90s. So,
well, I mean, one of the great things too, and the other thing that was so big this year, and why the Oscars took such an independent turn, is that English Patient was a hugely successful film. It wasn't like, you know, it made $10 million and it was still given Best Picture. It was like almost 80 million.
Yeah.
On a budget of 27 million. That's a huge hit. There's no way around that. That is a big hit. And that's a big part of the Oscars too, of taking something that might have been risky material. This is also a 3-hour movie. Taking something that's risky material, having it be successful, and that being a big part of its reward. Titanic is a perfect example of that.
Oh, yeah.
Titanic is a movie that was fated to be a massive disaster and lose money, and it did exactly the opposite. So rewarding it on those terms made it very easy for the Academy. And I think that happened with The English Patient too. If it had made $25 million, I think things could have been more up in the air as to what would win. I mean, the film lost adapted screenplay, which was actually a big deal. I was super happy that Billy Bob Thornton won. Really happy. But one of the elements that was really loved about the film was the adaptation, because the book was so notoriously difficult to adapt. So that was a surprise. That was a big surprise that it lost that. But I'm not sad about it at all.
I think they did really appreciate the kind of narrative behind the making of The English Patient, which also had this other element, which was the studios not wanting Kristen Scott Thomas to be the actress versus Ralph Fiennes in the movie. And, you know, Anthony Minghella really fought for her. And so I think there's some appeal to that for a lot of people as well in the industry. That's sort of just fighting for it and making it despite all the odds. So
yes, absolutely. But again, that's the thing where you can really do that in independent film versus Jerry Maguire.
Exactly.
Which, nothing against Jerry Maguire, which is a really good film, and it basically gave us Renee Zellweger. So
yes, so we should be grateful.
Exactly.
And just another thing that I took note of is that Fargo was released in April. So, you know, I think there are some exceptions. Obviously, we have The Silence of the Lambs again, going back to that, but very hard notoriously for movies that came out in the earlier months to do better than movies that came out in December around Christmas time. So, and that's what The English Patient was. Perfectly slotted in that December part of the year. So, yeah, it's a lot of factors, and all of them are in the English Patient's favor. And looking back at the websites, the ones that were actually up at the time, their predictions from 96, it was just like everyone knew it was The English Patient, done and done. Like there was no runner-up. Like it was going to be The English Patient. So
yes,
it was just a question of how much it would sweep, and it certainly swept quite a bit. It got 9 awards, which is one of the most awarded movies in Oscar history. So
yeah, it only lost 2.
Yeah, one of which was Kristen Scott Thomas.
Yes, which, you know, was inevitable. That was never going to happen. But then the adapted screenplay lost too.
Yeah, definitely a surprise. Yeah, so let's talk about other movies in the race this year. So we have Jerry Maguire, we have Secrets and Lies, and we have Shine. Those are the other Best Picture nominees. Mm-hmm. Let's just talk Jerry Maguire real quick, because this is a really interesting movie. I think you alluded to the fact that you like the movie. I also really like the movie.
Yeah, I do like it.
I love that it's here. I always love when there's sort of romantic comedies like this in the race. And I'm just going to say it. I love Tom Cruise in this movie.
I think it's one of his best, and it's one of the Tom Cruisiest performances he's given.
It is quintessential Tom Cruise.
Very much so.
Yeah. And like you said, we have the introduction, really, of Renee Zellweger. And I think she plays off of him really well, and I like that they went with her. And I like that we discovered her through this movie. She's really good, too.
She is really good, but she is very non-traditional casting.
Exactly.
She didn't look like who you would put alongside Tom Cruise.
Right.
And that was kind of cool. That was kind of great. And there wasn't even like a part of it or like an issue. It just, she is there because she was the one that was the best. And I like that.
Yeah, I always love that. And obviously, Cuba Gooding Jr. is the person who gets the Oscar for the movie. Divisive performance, to say the least. This is his only appearance at the Academy Awards, of course. What do you make of Cuba? I feel like you don't care for him in this movie.
It's not that I don't care for him. I just don't care for the win.
Yeah.
He's great. He's really, really good.
He's a scene stealer. What can you say?
Yeah, no, he is. He has big moments and he has the big line. I mean, that's, talk about quotable movies. This movie has two huge quotable lines that have lasted decades.
Yeah.
And he's fine. He's fine. But when you put him up against William H. Macy and Edward Norton,
right, that's the thing.
There are other things at play. So,
yeah.
But still, this is all apples and oranges. It's all apples and oranges.
Right. I'm happy for him that he got this award. I mean, I think he's very underrated as an actor to begin with, and not a lot of people take him seriously, especially at this point. But I'm glad he got it for this. It's a fun role that a lot of people can kind of see why he won for it. I don't know.
He also gave, one of the most memorable Oscar moments in probably the show's history that none of the other four would have given. And not that, that they knew that was going to happen and that's a reason to do it. But
that's probably why they awarded Roberto Benigni.
Well, yes, that almost goes without saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a wonderful moment. His exuberance and his happiness and his
always great to see. Yeah.
And his pride of winning is absolutely palpable. It's a wonderful thing. It's infectious. And so I don't discount that.
Yeah.
At all.
And speaking of show me the money, my previous guest, Ashley Cuss, on the LA Confidential episode, when I asked for questions for this episode, all she said was, "Can you show me the money?" And yes, here it is. I mean, the movie made actually a lot of money. So
oh yeah. It was the biggest moneymaker of the nominees by a long shot.
Yeah. So there you have it. There's the money.
They did, yes. Well, that was in an era of Tom Cruise being able to be just churning out $100 million hits.
Yeah, one after another.
Yeah.
It was just like him and Julia Roberts just churning them out.
Yeah.
During the 90s. So I also got a few other questions related to Jerry Maguire.
Okay.
First of all, Karen Peterson just tweeted a GIF of Tom Cruise in the movie, which, yeah, I mean, I agree. He's great. And Mark Lamb tweeted something interesting, which is Fargo's reputation and cultural awareness soared while The English Patience has fallen with Seinfeld's imitation, which is great. That's another thing I forgot to mention is Seinfeld.
God.
Yeah. But
that's pretty funny.
And he says Fargo is even a TV show. Jerry Maguire's lines became classics. You had me at hello, etc.
Mm-hmm.
He said Bill Maher just quoted "Help me, help you" on his recent show. Either one of them could have been Best Picture. I think Fargo certainly more than Jerry Maguire, but I don't know. What do you think? What do you think about the prospect of a Jerry Maguire Best Picture winner?
Even in that era, that would have been a pretty non-traditional winner.
Yeah.
And based on this lineup of 5, it is there because it was the studio pick, because it's the only one.
Right.
But I wouldn't have pegged it as a winner, even as, completely, if I had overlooked, missing the directing nomination. It still wouldn't really ring true as a winner. It ironically felt like The Token.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas in previous years, it would be the independent film that would be like the Token.
So it reminds me of like at the Emmys as of late, or not really lately, but when like The Big Bang Theory would get in or 2.5 Men would get in, because it's like the only multi-camera comedy left.
Exactly.
It's basically like that.
But back in the day when like CSI would get a drama nomination because it was the biggest ratings hit at the time. And it's like, you don't need to be that transparent, but you're being really transparent right now.
Pretty much. Yeah. The studio's fighting back.
Yes, again, popular versus best.
Exactly. The age-old debate. Let's see. So this is interesting because Kyle Eilinger tweeted, "Is this one of the weakest years for Best Picture nominees? Fargo is great, and I get The English Patient, but the other 3 are reaches. I'd swap them for Trainspotting, The Birdcage, and maybe Courage Under Fire."
Oh my God.
Thoughts, concerns?
Let me compose myself.
Yes, gather.
Secrets and Lies is one of the best movies ever made. So I will never, ever, ever discount that nomination here. It was absolutely shocking and legendary that it got in. So
let's talk about it now. This is a good transition point because, I agree. Secrets and Lies is amazing and just took my breath away when I saw it. It just really floored me with the acting, especially by Brenda Blethyn. I mean, I felt so much for her in that entire movie. And I feel like just as an actress, I feel like she had to go through so much in that part. And Marianne Jean-Baptiste, of course, is really great. And even Timothy Spall. Yeah, not Small. It's great as well.
Yeah, it's I understand. I love The Birdcage too. So I get that. And that's actually something we could talk about in a little bit too, considering that its trajectory should have gotten it somewhere in here.
Right.
But I don't see how you can discount a movie like Secrets and Lies being able to get in to picture, director, and the 2 acting nominations. Obviously, it was going to get screenwriting because they love Mike Leigh.
Love.
Not
enough to win, but
yeah, I don't think he'll ever win. But I mean, this was just this was a landmark year, and I can't overstate it. And I'm much older than you. So I think I was probably your age watching this live.
Fair enough.
This was a landmark year in terms of what the Oscars could look like. And their willingness to nominate really small films that they really, really loved. There was an honesty to so many of these nominations that we don't always see and didn't always see before, where sometimes we feel like nominees will get in and films will get in that are there for many other reasons than the quality of the film or performance. And this is not one of those cases.
Yeah.
So there is just, it's so genuine that it's in. And just one of those moments that gives you some faith in the Academy. So I would never discount this movie getting in, or Marianne Jean-Baptiste, or Brenda Blethyn.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there was a fair amount of people who were predicting Brenda Blethyn to win Best Actress, because she had obviously won Golden Globe and other things before that. And I totally understand that. I think Frances McDormand just creates a legendary character with Fargo. So it's kind of really hard for me to choose between those two. But
yeah, it's interesting that you could see a scenario in which those two wins that Fargo had could have been Secrets and Lies wins as well.
Exactly.
And they would have been the only wins.
Yeah.
Just like Fargo. So it's I'm almost surprised they didn't split it up a little bit, because Fargo was the only other film that won more than one Oscar that year, which is also very unusual. But when you have a sweep, that just happens.
Mm-hmm.
But they could have easily gone with Secrets and Lies in screenplay or with Brenda Blethyn.
Yeah, and they both, I would not have really argued with those, even though I probably would have voted for Fargo in both of those cases and preferred those. I can't get too mad about Mike Leigh and Brenda Blethyn winning Oscars. So,
no.
Yeah, one of those unfortunate cases of two really great movies going against each other that would have won in other weaker years. So,
yes.
Let's talk about Shine. Shine is the designated biopic in the race.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah. Of the pianist David Helfgott, and Jeffrey Rush wins an Oscar for this role. This movie was nominated for 7 Oscars, as was Fargo, so it was one of the most nominated movies, despite, again, being very small, very independent, and kind of an underdog story. I actually just watched Shine for the first time this week.
Ooh.
I had just been avoiding it because I wasn't totally interested in it, but I wasn't that blown away by it, honestly. I don't know how it would have felt to me in the context of 1996, with the way biopics have become so formulaic, but was not Best Picture worthy, in my opinion. So
it's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's fine. I think I have the same feeling about it now that I did then. I'm happy that it got in, because it represented just a very different, smaller film, but it's fine.
What a ringing endorsement.
I know. I'm just not, I'm not tripping over myself to praise it, because it's all right.
Yeah. I just wish that it had kind of delved into things a little deeper, rather than kind of brushing by this guy's entire life story in an hour and 40 minutes. But
it is very short. Yeah.
I
wish Noah Taylor had gotten nominated, though.
I was
Armin Mueller-Stahl.
Yeah, for sure. I was really impressed by him.
Yeah, he was my favorite part, not Jeffrey Rush.
Mm-hmm. And Jeffrey Rush doesn't exactly have the most amount of screen time in the movie either. So
nope.
Interesting how this is something we didn't really talk about with Fargo, but the fact that Frances McDormand doesn't show up until like 30 minutes into Fargo in a very short movie.
Yes.
That's pretty significant in a kind of a Silence of the Lambs, Anthony Hopkins sort of way, but to a bigger extent, obviously. Yeah. This idea of, an actor really overshadowing a lot more than, what their screen time is. So.
Yes. Impact is a big deal for voters, and then they will overlook screen time for the impact of the performance.
Yeah. And Juliette Binoche in The English Patient, I feel like that's also a little bit borderline lead supporting, so it's an interesting category.
I think it was, in addition to the film going on such a sweep, it was one of the elements that would have tipped her over as a winner, which was a very much an uphill battle for her against Lauren Bacall. So,
oh yes, that was obviously a famous race.
One of the most famous ever.
Yeah. Oh man.
Lauren was pissed.
Yeah, you can just tell. Oh God.
Man.
And then Juliette Binoche gets up there and basically like apologizes for taking it from Lauren Bacall, essentially.
That really just kind of rubbed salt in the wound, even though that wasn't the intent, but boy did it.
Yeah. Oh boy. So yeah, it's a very interesting race. Lots of great independent movies represented. And I think that did kind of allow the Academy to feel comfortable with awarding independent movies and not necessarily just going with the studio fare every single year.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that would eventually come back to bite them now that we have a popular film category. So here we are. So let's get into other movies from 1996 that we liked in the Should Have Been a Contender segment, other movies that were nominated for Oscars, or movies completely ignored by the Academy. So, okay, this is going to be Erik's Evita corner.
Oh my God. You
right?
Totally already spoiled it.
Yeah.
Yes. Evita, Madonna should have been nominated. Fuck you, Diane Keaton.
Wow.
Yeah. It's straight up. I was so upset. Mm-hmm. I loved her Golden Globe win. It was so savagely Golden Globe-y to reward her over Frances McDormand. It was
so quintessential.
Oh my God. It was. And it's something I hope they never ever change about themselves. Even though they try and, strive for more legitimacy. I hope they never, go that far, because I love that win. I love that win. I think it is a deserved win. I think she deserved a nomination. She is amazing in that movie. I think the movie deserved even more nominations than it got. It's insane that it did not get a costume nomination. I don't understand how that happened.
Yeah.
Madonna alone had 85 different costume changes. How the fuck did it not? That movie is 90% costumes. How did it not get in? I don't understand that. I don't
get that either. Yeah.
It drives me crazy. But it got 5 nominations, which is really awesome, and I was really happy for her.
Yeah.
And one, for song. I am still gutted that Madonna couldn't even write a couple of lines in it so that she could get nominated and win.
I know.
That would have made me really, really happy.
Yeah.
But she performed on the show anyway.
Bravely. Yes.
Bravely.
After that injustice.
As Billy Crystal even said. Oh my God. So
yeah.
I have a list of things that I would have, loved to see get more or get some in, but Evita will always be my number one.
Yeah, for sure.
Always.
And going back to the Golden Globe thing, I just find it so fascinating and hilarious that so many years later, we had the exact same situation where Lady Gaga wins a Golden Globe for beating an actress in Fargo, Kirsten Dunst. I mean, is that not just the most beautiful twist of fate?
It's so funny.
How does this happen?
Yeah.
This is why I watch the Golden Globes.
That's why they're the best.
Yeah. And that's why you can't get mad at them for going with Madonna, because they were always going to go with Madonna. And
exactly.
You know what? I think it's totally fine that she has that Golden Globe, because I agree. I think she is really great in the movie. I think it was a stellar performance from her. I think she really obviously cared a lot about that character and did everything she could to get it to begin with. And then once she stepped into the role, I thought her voice was really good. She showed some new layers to her voice.
Well, she took singing lessons. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
It paid off.
Yeah, it definitely did. And I would not have been mad at a Best Actress nomination for Madonna. I mean,
no.
So.
Not one bit.
And I have to also say, I really like Antonio Banderas in that movie as well.
He's good. Yes.
Yeah.
He is good.
I'm just saying he has that kind of lustful passion to him that really works.
Yes. Yeah, he's
Just
really,
saying.
really good.
Just saying. Other movies. Well, I just wanted to mention a criminally underlooked animated film in the Disney canon, and that movie is The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
That's a great movie.
Yes, that is a movie that has become a little bit of an ugly stepchild in the Disney Renaissance,
so to speak.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. But it's not really sold with like merchandise that much anymore or anything. But really dark story, really dark material that I appreciated Disney was willing to take a chance on and make happen. And I mean, the villain alone, Frollo, is like this sexually confused and like hypocritical religious person. I love that. I love his character. I love Hellfire, which is just like one of the best Disney songs because of just how dark it is. And I just love the unconventional hero of having Quasimodo. And again, just a dark story. I hate the gargoyles, but I understand why they're there for the kids. But even like when I was a kid watching it, I was just like, who are these awful creatures? I'm like, I want more of this weird sexual passion thing happening between Frollo and Esmeralda. So anyway, enough about my psychological damage. Anyway, I just wish it had gotten a little more attention than it did or still does now.
Yeah, it got score when it was still, a separation of drama and comedy scores.
Yeah.
But yeah,
none of the songs got in.
That was a surprise.
Yeah. Even the Bells of Notre Dame, the first song, is so good, so dark, so passionate. I just love the whole score. So other movies?
So yeah, I mean, I really have a lot. So I'll try and combine them together to make the most sense. 2 movies that got only 1 nomination each and in the same category that deserved more than they got, I thought were The Birdcage and Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet.
Yes.
Both deserved nominations there, absolutely, but definitely deserved more, especially The Birdcage.
Yeah.
And so this was the first year after the Screen Actors Guild started the cast category, and The Birdcage won. And Nathan Lane was nominated. I mean, there was so much behind this movie that made so much sense as a nominee, and obviously in an expanded lineup year, it certainly would have been. As with, I'm sure, a lot of the things that we're going to mention in this should have been nominated section. I just think it deserved so much more than it got. Nathan Lane deserved to get in. The score deserved to get in. Like I said, I'm glad the art direction did. Costumes, I would have just gone full on with this movie. Romeo and Juliet, almost the same. Costumes should have gotten in. I wouldn't have hated a film editing nomination in place of Shine. Sure.
Yeah, seriously, like
because
such
otherwise,
a waste of a nomination.
Oh my god, it's ridiculous. So those are 2 that I felt got the short shrift in a major way with those single nominations apiece.
Yeah. Odd.
Yeah. 2 other movies that got a handful of nominations and even a win that I thought deserved more than they got was The People versus Larry Flint and Sling Blade.
Yeah.
So I think Sling Blade at the time that year, that was one of my favorite films of the year, and Billy Bob Thornton was my favorite performance of the year. It was, I had never really seen anything quite so transformative, and even though he wasn't a well-known person, but right. it was an incredibly moving performance. And I just think it's a great film. And
well, before you move on,
yeah,
that's Josh Parham did want to ask thoughts on Sling Blade and Thornton's performance. Yeah, obviously, like you said, really powerful stuff.
it
I
is.
have not seen it, so I can't say that. But
oh my god, yeah, you gotta rectify that, because it'll change you. I was really glad though that it was, a short that had to be adapted and got put into the adapted category, because it would not have won in original screenplay.
Exactly.
This was also a Miramax film, and it was the kind of independent film that would have gotten the couple of nominations that it got in an off year. But I mean, clearly, Miramax's push was English Patient, and it got the lion's share of that support. But enough was left over for Sling Blade to still grab a couple nominations and that win. But I would have put that in Best Picture, but that's me, and in a field of 5 even. Yeah. Sorry, Jerry Maguire or Shine.
What about Evita?
Well, see, now you're putting me in a corner that I don't know if I want to be in, because I probably wouldn't have English Patient there. If I had just top 5 right now, it would be Fargo, Secrets and Lies, Sling Blade, Evita, and probably People versus Larry Flynn.
That's one hell of a lineup.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the screenplay category, I did want to take note of Trainspotting. That is a film I really liked as a teenager, especially, but even now, with Danny Boyle directing 12 years before Slumdog Millionaire. And really, really dark comedy, again, dealing with drugs and making me not want to take said drugs. And just like Requiem for a Dream. And I had the poster. Actually, this probably says a lot about who I was as a teenager, but I had the poster of that long quote about choosing life and everything in my room. Choose life.
That's adorable.
Thanks.
That was a great nomination, though. Again, and
very inspired.
Yeah. It's exactly what it was extremely inspired and surprising. And it was like, oh, wow, this is what, the Academy can be, is this.
Yeah.
It was so ballsy.
It was. Another screenplay nomination in the other category, Lone Star.
Oh, God. I might have to change my mind and put that in my top 5, because that was one of my favorite films of the year, too.
Strong year. Yeah. Well, I spoke about my film studies class last week. This is another movie that we watched in film studies as a high schooler, which was a very interesting, inspired choice by my teacher there. And I remember the reaction to the ending twist, where their half siblings have decided to sort of be together. That did not play well at all. Everyone in my class, most of them are very casual, like they didn't really care about this class anyway. So wow. This is an easy class, and they're just like revolted by the entire prospect. So that was just fun.
I don't like people that think film class is some type of easy elective or an
that
easy
is exactly
class.
What everyone thought, and I'm just like over here in the corner like, take this seriously.
It is not.
It's not
at all.
Yeah.
So boo on that.
Yes.
I love Lone Star. I love John Sayles. John Sayles is one of the most important independent filmmakers ever. He laid the ground for so many people, certainly for like Steven Soderbergh.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he never got to, really kind of reap the rewards of it, or, have a career that turned into something else other than be like a ghostwriter on Mimic and other high profile movies. It's his trajectory was so odd. This was like the top moment in that. And again, too, it's all very subjective of how you view a career. And I'm certainly not going to put any words in his mouth as to what he feels like his career is. But I mean, what the Coen brothers were able to do with their extremely independent career to Fargo and then build from Fargo up, or Steven Soderbergh from Sex, Lies, and Videotape, and then getting to a point where, Traffic is a Best Director winner, and building on there. That he never really did that. John Sayles never really kind of was able to parlay this level of recognition into something more than that. And I'm always very sad about that.
Yeah. And that's sadly the case for a lot of smaller filmmakers. So that's all I had for my list. I don't know if you had any others.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's weird. Am I saying this is a movie I would have liked to get Oscar nominations in retrospect, or
Sure.
in the year, because we're talking again, like I said, about every year being its own.
Very true.
Otherwise, I'd say, yeah, Scream should have gotten fucking Oscar nominations, because that's
Absolutely.
a great movie, and what it did historically was huge. So, and I got to work on it, so I have a little bit of a
hey, look at you.
I have a heart, for that movie. It was great. It was
awesome.
It was so much fun. I don't know. Barry Brady sequel. That would have been awesome.
Sure. Why not?
But it's. I don't know. I don't know if there's not. I'm not. Very big on. You mentioned Courage Under Fire from another. I didn't remember the name of the person that mentioned it, but that isn't something that I would have been like super into. That was, oh my God, that was the first Mission Impossible that year, too.
Yeah, big year.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look at that. Tom Cruise had Mission Impossible and Jerry Maguire.
That is insane.
That is totally insane.
I also just wanted to, I was just looking over the full list of nominees here, and I just wanted to take note of That Thing You Do, which is a great song.
Yeah.
I just mean the song is.
The song is fun. The song is fun. I forgot. Oh my God, Flirting with Disaster. Oh my God.
Oh yes.
One of my favorite comedies of all time.
Mm-hmm.
All time. That was also Miramax too, and that was just like dumped. Nobody cared about that. Oh my God, I love that movie so much. Mary Tyler Moore should have been Oscar nominated. Period.
Yeah.
No questions asked.
Little did the Oscars know David O. Russell would become such a magnet for awards in like 20 years. So
that Patricia Arquette would be an Oscar winner now.
That's true. Yeah. Lots of interesting origin stories here in this year.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so if you don't have any others, we can move on to our final segment.
I think so. I think those are my big ones.
Yeah, again, really, really great year as we listed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when we come back, we will be discussing whether The English Patient rightfully won Best Picture or if Fargo really deserved it.
The nominees for Best Picture are The English Patient, Saul Zanuck, producer. Fargo, Ethan Coen, producer. Jerry Maguire, James L. Brooks, Lawrence Mark, Richard Sakai, and Cameron Crowe, producers. Secrets and Lies, Simon Channing Williams, producer. Shine, Jane Scott, producer. And the Oscar goes to The English Patient, Saul Zanuck.
And we're back. So now we are going to discuss whether The English Patient deserved that Best Picture win or if Fargo should have taken it. Erik Anderson, your verdict.
Well, I'm going to say this because before the break you said, did it rightfully win? Which is not the same as deserve to win, I think. Because I think we have established that the the parameters and everything in place certainly allowed it to rightfully win. It wasn't, some shocking robbery of Fargo.
Correct.
But in terms of deserve to win, I would totally give Fargo the win over English Patient.
Yes. Thank you for the semantics.
I'm all about semantics.
Yeah, so in case it wasn't clear, I totally agree that Fargo deserved this Best Picture win, and people like Roger Ebert and Siskel would agree, as they also had it as their number one movie of 1996. And I think it's a movie that was very influential. It probably inspired a lot of kind of knockoff filmmakers who thought they could do dark comedy like this, but weren't exactly able to capture the magic that Fargo is. So,
oh my God, we had so many of those.
Yeah,
happen after that. That like 8 heads in the duffel bag and was like 10 Days in the Valley or whatever. There was just that it created a whole genre.
Yeah, so very influential.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so Fargo definitely deserved to win. English Patient is fine. I understand why it won. It all makes sense. But with history, looking back on it, I think Fargo has clearly stood the test of time more than the English Patient has. So that's that.
Yeah.
Okay. So thanks again, Erik, for coming on with me again.
Absolutely. I love it. I yeah. Always, anytime.
Anytime. I'll have you on next week then. Congrats, you're my new co-host.
That's the thing, though. I'm older than most of you guys, so my experience with it is firsthand.
That's why you're a good resource.
I could be like, I remember what that Oscar campaign was like.
Yes, 1968.
Hey, now, wait a minute.
Sorry, too shady. So, anyway, tell the fine people where they can find you on the internet.
On the internet at AwardsWatch.com and Twitter at awards_watch, and then Instagram, Facebook, AwardsWatch.
Beautiful. You have a lot of interesting interviews out with a lot of Emmy nominees, so definitely check that out. Check that out. And you can find me on Twitter at Kevin_Jacobson, and you can find the podcast at Oscar Runner Up. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Google Play. And now I'm going to leave it up to you at home listening to decide whether you think the English Patient deserved to win or if Fargo deserved to win. And you can do that on my website at filmtrophies.com, or you can email me at filmtrophies@gmail.com. So thanks again, Erik.
Thank you.
And I will bid you all adieu.